And the bankers, they will have, I mean, they're openly announcing a Bank of the world government run by the same parasites.
Exactly. Are we going to a break?
Yes, long segment coming up. We kind of have our breaks all stacked up together there. Amazing information, amazing book, TomWoods.com. Find out more. You can simply get his book in all your great bookstores everywhere. Meltdown, a free market look at why the stock market collapse, the economy tank, the government bailouts will make things worse. And they are. And how worse we'll discuss on the other side. They're going for broke. Stay with us. Infowars.com.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done has been right.
Now let's go to somebody who isn't an average guy, Thomas E. Woods. And, economist, researcher, historian. And we appreciate him coming on the show. He's with the Ludwig von Mises Institute. Okay, continuing, sir. I'd gotten up to the point of the new Bank of the World, Financial Times of London, and now for world government, ruled by the very George Soros pirates. Please continue and go through the facts, proving for people that don't know that government is making it worse.
Oh, well, there's no question about it. I mean, the short version is that to some extent, we can say the Fed is a private institution. That's all well and good. But as a private institution, it would be in big trouble if it didn't have the monopoly power the government gave it to create all the money it wants to out of thin air. That's the governments and central banks always have incestuous relationships with each other, and this one works both ways. And it's the Fed that basically gave us this boom by forcing interest rates really low, getting the economy on a boom that it couldn't sustain in the long run, and bidding up housing prices. We wouldn't have had this housing bubble, the bursting of which has ruined so many people's lives, if we hadn't insisted on having a Soviet commissar running our money and interest rates. Because what would have happened is if you and I had just started buying a lot of houses just as a hobby or something, on a free market, the banks would have run out of money to lend to us, and interest rates would have shot up, and that would have put an end to all this speculation. We wouldn't have had people buying 5 investment properties and having no job. But when you have the Alan Greenspan figure, the great maestro, and he can create all the money he wants, well, he can give the banks even more to lend and keep this artificial boom going.
And they didn't stop there. They then packaged the crud. Well, explain that later, but go ahead.
Yeah, then they package the crud, sell it all over the world, and meanwhile, all their experts, the Fed economists, even Ben Bernanke himself was saying, no, there's no housing bubble, these prices are sustainable, they're real, go ahead, you should have an adjustable rate mortgage, you should do all these things. Wonderful. I mean, and so people did, understandably, and they flipped houses, and people thought they could make a living simply by living in a house. Now, there's something wrong with that you could think that by sitting here in my house, I'm going to get wealthy. But it feeds into this sort of get-rich-quick sort of mentality.
It's delusion. Is it not mass delusion?
It absolutely was. And so it just fed on itself. And eventually, inevitably, this has to crash. There are only so many $900,000 houses people are prepared to buy. So this is an entirely a Federal Reserve System engineered boom and bust. And then we just read just today that now the Fed is going to be given even more powers over American businesses in the future. So again, as usual, the lesson is no matter how much you screw up, the solution is we're going to give you more power. No matter what happens, that is always a thing. And then,
well, Tom, here's a question, and then you can continue with your expert breakdown.
Sure.
The issue is even Senator Byrd, the fossil, is saying these czars are unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional to announce that the TSA is going to be in every major city running checkpoints on the road and on bus terminals and trains, and to have the president grab GM and fire the CEO. I mean, I can't even believe it's getting this crazy. What's coming next? I mean, it's all completely illegal.
Well, I think they're being encouraged by the fact that they take these risks. They say, you know what, let's see what the American population does if we take over the car companies, or if we fire the CEO, or if we put checkpoints everywhere. And by and large, I do think the number of people who are resisting this is growing, but it's not growing fast enough, and it can't grow fast enough. And so I think they're being encouraged to do more, to go faster than I think they imagined they could get away with at this point.
Well, that's it. I mean, they're announcing Northcom and the Army Times is ready to, quote, shoot Americans, and that the Army's new job is worrying about veterans and gun owners, and DHS reports, and everything's getting crazed, and the news admits that Texas police everywhere are just robbing old ladies of their wallets. I mean, it's really becoming Twilight Zone. I mean, how much crazier do you think it'll get?
Well, I mean, as I say, I'm surprised it got this crazy. So I think it's very hard to put an upper bound on it. But what most irritates me is the idea that people who question something like the Fed, which you would think a normal society would question, if one guy can create trillions of dollars and then blow it and not even have to tell us where it's going, I mean, you would think a normal society would question that. But you're considered to be off the wall crazy if you want to know what's going on with all this money. But that you would think that would be the normal reaction. And I get told a lot on the radio that since I favor abolishing the Fed, that I'm just throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Well, guilty as charged because it's a demon baby. You know, I want the bathwater, the whole tub out of here. This institution...
Exactly. It's the demon baby that created all this. Sorry, go ahead.
It created all this. It makes the wars possible. It is the central funder of the empire. It is the lifeblood of the empire. And it is, at the same time, as I say, it is the author of the booms and busts.
Wow.
And it is also the institution that, in effect, encourages all this crazy, risky behavior, because the major Wall Street firms, they know, and they have known for a long time, and especially during Greenspan's tenure, that if things really get bad for the major Wall Street actors, Alan Greenspan, or whoever the Fed chairman happens to be at the time, will bail you out, because he has the power to do it. He can do it. He can create the money to bail you out. So why should we be surprised? We have no right to be surprised if Wall Street begins to get drunk, as George W. Bush said. Well, why shouldn't they? You know, I mean, they've got a safe ride home sitting right in the room. You know, why shouldn't they get drunk?
Yeah, they're validated. They're encouraged to loot and steal. Meanwhile, you make $1,000 mistake on your income tax that the money's paid to the private Federal Reserve, and 3 years later it's $15,000 in penalties and interest, and there's no judge or jury, no court for you. We're held to this super high standard. And I'm seeing the delusion in government, not just in the corporate world, intensify. They really believe the craziness that they're engaged in. How do you see this unfolding market-wise? I mean, I keep asking the same question. How much further can this go historically when it finally does shake out? Where are we going to be? What is it going to look like when the dust settles?
Well, I mean, I think if they continue on the path they're on, I think this will be prolonged. It'll be worse than what happened to Japan, and I see no reason that they won't continue on this path. Obama the other day, when they were telling him, "Hey, the economy is still in the toilet. You know, what do you think about that?" And he said, "Well, don't worry, we got more stimulus money coming down the pipeline." So he never thinks, nor do any of them ever think, that the problem is we've had too much of a destructive policy. It's always that we haven't had enough of it. We got to just keep doing it. And one of the points I make in Meltdown is this totally forgotten episode in American history. Nobody remembers there was a depression in the year 1920, and the reason we don't remember it is that the Fed was still so young it hardly even knew how to operate yet. It wasn't doing open market operations. The Fed stayed out of it. The federal budget was cut in half in 2 years, and the result was you had a very quick, robust recovery. Now, that's the exact opposite of what we're told today. We're told today the government needs to get more power, it needs to spend more money, it needs to inflate, it needs to do all this stuff, because otherwise we'll have a disaster. Well, to the contrary, the one time we had a chance to do the opposite of this, we were out of it before you know it. But meanwhile, they are doing the very opposite of what makes sense, and they're doing exactly the same things that have now given Japan, in the last quarter annualized, Japan's economy shrank by over 15%. I mean, that you expect to hear that out of Haiti or Zimbabwe. This is Japan, and they've done everything that Geithner and all the so-called experts tell them to do. It is long past time we dispense with these so-called experts. We not feel intimidated by these people. These are morons when it comes to economics. We should have confidence that if you just sit down, and one thing I'm good at, I mean, I'm bad at a lot of things, but one thing I'm good at is explaining this stuff so the average person can get it. And a lot of people read Meltdown and they say, you know, I understand this so clearly now. Why is it impossible for these people to get it? And then, of course, that leads to a deeper question.
Well, Tom, we know why. They're crazy like a fox. There's a method to the madness. I've read the IMF World Bank documents, as I'm sure you have. I mean, they know what they're doing. They give us all the risk. They get all the profit. And they love wrecking economies, you know, controlled command destruction. And it was great for the oligarchs in Russia when everything fell apart there. They got great power. It's great for these oligarchs. And it's like George Soros said, I'm having a great crisis. I love it. This is the culmination of my life, close quote. They know what they're doing. And as everything implodes, then all we've got is government. It becomes the central pillar. And so I want you to speak to that. But then also, there's two schools of thought and solution. I believe in the Austrian school. I know you're right. I've studied the history. But we're already so far down the road of big government and crony capitalism, monopoly capitalism, that if we're going to have 14.8 trillion pumped out in the last 7 months, if that would have gone to big work projects and to things on the Main Street real economy, it'd still be a big debt and inflation and the wrong way to go. But it'd be a lot better than pumping it offshore to speculators to then buy barges of oil and park it off of, park it off of islands of the Mediterranean, as J.P. Morgan's doing, to then jack up gas prices with artificially, so we then pay a tax to them on that. I sure know that if we're going to have 14.7 trillion and it's our money of fiat currency, I mean, Bloomberg reported all the mortgages in the country were $9.5 trillion. With this 14 trillion, we could have paid off all our mortgages. I mean, I think that's the message to the little socialist, the little blue collar people that don't understand this, that, hey, they took your money offshore.